Seeing the hour of 6 o'clock, having arrived, to call the Tuesday, May 20th council meeting to order. Heather, if you'd please call the roll.
Patrick Singer,
Here.
Greg Myshak, Mike Smith,
Here.
Orin Smith,
Here.
Steve Sayun,
Here.
Ryan Shannon,
Here.
Neil Hicks,
Here.
All right, if we do number one a little bit out of order, if we just start with Pledge of Allegiance then, and then we can deal with the transparency ordinance and the agenda. So if everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Now that we got the easy stuff out of the way, we'll move on to our approval of the agenda, which first up, we did have an item added, less than 72-hour notice as required by the City of Whitewater Transparency Ordinance, and that would be to amend, add number CS 30 and and item number 32, which related to a closed session to confer with legal counsel regarding strategy and legal considerations related to potential violations of the Wisconsin Open Meetings Law and Wisconsin Public Records Law involving the school district's handling of the School Resource Officer contract process. And that's the closed session, but then the open session is discussion of possible action on that matter. So we would require a motion, and that would require a majority vote to waive the 72-hour notice.
I'd like to make a motion to remove items CS 30 and CS 32.
Second.
All right.
Which would hopefully then avoid the need for,
Yeah. So, just trying to think of the order we should have done that in. All right, so the motion is to remove those two items from tonight's agenda. Any discussion?
I'd like to hear discussion if what the reasoning for that would be.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind either, because this wasn't like my request to put this on as manager. All right, the manager was requested to add this item. It's not like the manager decided to put this on and
Yeah.
looked for the council to do this.
so I made the motion to remove it, so I'll just state that I think relations between the school district and the city are already battered, and I want to see that the relationships get better, so we can address a lot of this in open session, not necessarily some of the legal things, but we can address a lot of the questions with the RFP and the SRO officer in public, open session. So if we have issues after that or additional questions, we can always look at bringing it back next meeting.
Brian, did you have
I like that thought process.
Yeah. All right, any further discussion? All right, Heather, if you please call the roll on that.
Shannon,
Aye.
Orin Smith,
Aye.
Singer,
Aye.
Sayun,
Aye.
Hicks,
Aye.
Mike Smith.
Aye.
All right, next up is approval of the agenda. Is there anything anybody else would like to add or remove at this time, or is there a motion to approve with that modification?
Move items 13, 14, and 15 of staff reports into the consent agenda along with the striking of those two that we just struck.
Okay. So that will move 13, 14, 13, which was Spring Splash After Action Report, which was in our packet. The ATV, UTV update, where there was also a memo in the packet. And then the speed data for Walworth Avenue and Prince Street, which was also documented in the packet. Those would be on the consent agenda, so we would, right now, we're just approving to move them up, and then later on, we would move to approve those items.
I second that.
All right, so the motion was by Shannon, seconded by Smith M., to approve the agenda with the modification of the staff reports items 13, 14, and 15 being moved on to consent, and the previously approved motion is in force in terms of removing those items regarding the school district. All right, any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, that motion is approved. All right, next up, we have a guest speaker tonight. It is about housing, but it is not about housing like we've been talking about it. So thankfully, we are moving on to a community-based focus. So we do have representatives from Bethel House, which they can kind of give an overview for those that may not be familiar with them. And they're here to present 2024 data about community members who are facing homelessness or who are unhoused. And there was also a handout in the packet as well. So I will turn it over to the Bethel House folks.
Okay, I'm gonna go first. I'm the newest one to Bethel House. My name's Ange Doman. I am the director now as of January of this year. Before this, I worked at New Beginnings, so I'm very familiar with the populations that we have here in Whitewater. I'm very honored to be a part of Bethel House. We're very thankful that you guys are having us here tonight. So I'm gonna turn it over to Jesse, the board president.
Good evening. My name is Jessie Dugan. I've had the privilege of being in Whitewater as a resident for 17 years. And as Ange said, I currently serve as the chair. And we're thrilled to be here with you tonight. And I'm thrilled that I have a bunch of our board members here as well. Our purpose in being here is just to highlight some of the data that we have collected since 2024, or in 2024, and just to be a reminder of the work, remind everyone of the work that Bethel House is doing in the Whitewater community. For 31 years now, Bethel House has quietly and steadfastly served families in Whitewater who are on the brink of homelessness. In 2024 alone, we supported 70 families alongside 2 local church partners. We prevented 24 evictions from happening. And we helped to keep children in our community so that they could stay in what they knew of as their home and they could stay in schools. I was here in May last year, and again, we're here tonight to share some of the challenges that these families are facing in our community and to be really transparent about the data and what we're learning from the work with these families. I know all of you have already received a copy of the report, so we're not going to walk through everything in detail, but there are a couple of things we really would like to draw your attention to, and these are things that our board has found surprising, or things that other community leaders have found surprising, or lawmakers have found surprising when we've spoken to them in the last several months. First of all, on page 4, the household, it's the one that's got the chart at the bottom. This one, this data comes specifically from Walworth County, and it really illustrates a hard truth, which is that working families, those who exist and live above the poverty line, still face housing instability. Even if they're receiving assistance, there isn't enough to bridge the gap between their income and the basic costs of living. And a lot of this data is from pre-2025. All of us are already seeing the effects of rising prices and rising costs. So this doesn't even show you what's been happening in the last 6 to 8 months, if that makes sense. A previous staff member used to always talk about this by saying the math doesn't ever math. So assuming that because someone may be already receiving assistance, assuming that then they are in a position to be in a stable environment, it's just a myth. The second thing we want to make sure that we talk about is that there are stories behind these numbers, and they are very human stories. The leading reasons, and we allude to this in other places in the report, the leading reasons that people call Bethel House for help are very human, everyday reasons. They have to miss work because they have a child who's sick, and their employer does not provide paid time off at all, and no sick time for themselves or their child. They have unreliable transportation. There is a lack of affordable and accessible childcare in our community. These are not the failings of an individual, but are systemic issues that many of us also deal with, and many of these things are beyond their control. The last thing that we wanted to share tonight is perhaps the most heartbreaking trend that we've seen. In the last 18 months, only one family that went through our entire program was able to stay in Whitewater after completing the program. All of the other families that went through our program, despite wanting to stay, despite their ties to the Whitewater community and their children's schools, had to leave and move out of Whitewater because they simply could not find affordable and accessible housing here. The majority of these families moved to Fort Atkinson, they moved to Elkhorn, and they moved to Janesville. Tonight, we want to ask you to consider Bethel House as a resource. Let us be a voice for the families that are living this day to day and facing housing insecurity. Families who probably are not going to ever have the opportunity to stand here before all of you themselves. We also ask thoughtfully that you continue to use your positions, not just as administrators, but also as advocates for meaningful and systemic change at the state level. Your voices matter, and your advocacy can hopefully help to create some long-term, stable solutions for our community. We know that this council is already grappling with the issue of housing and affordable housing. We thank you for doing the difficult work that it takes to address some of these issues. Please continue to prioritize this work. When we confront the issues behind homelessness and poverty, when we work together, all of us, the board members, community members, think that we move closer to building a fairer and stronger future for everyone who calls Whitewater home. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Jesse? All right. Thank you. Next up, we have the consent agenda. We already added 13, 14, and 15 onto it, but is there any other modifications to the consent agenda, either removals or additions, or a motion to approve as presented?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Shannon, second by Hicks, to approve the consent agenda as amended earlier on the agenda. Heather, if you please read the items.
Approval of Common Council minutes from May 6, 2025. Public Works Committee meeting minutes from April 8, 2025. Alcohol Licensing Committee meeting minutes from March 18, 2025. Landmarks Commission meeting minutes from April 2, 2025. Plan and Architectural Review Commission meeting minutes from April 14, 2025. Public Arts Commission meeting minutes from April 3, 2025. Proposed artwork on the traffic signal control boxes. Approval of the driveway over 35 feet for Lavelle Industries at 1215 Universal Boulevard. The April 2025 financials. The Spring Splash After Action Report. The ATV UTV update. And the speed data on Walworth Ave and Prince Street.
All right, so there was a motion to approve with all those items on. Is there any further council discussion on this? Are there any items on the consent agenda any member of the public wish to speak on? All right, Heather, then if you'd please call the roll.
Shannon?
Aye.
Sayun?
Aye.
Mike Smith?
Aye.
Hicks?
Aye.
Singer?
Aye.
Orin Smith?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Next up, John, I'll turn it over to you for city manager report.
Thanks. And as a general reminder, the entirety of the city manager report is available with all the full notes in the agenda packet, so I'm going to hit the highlights and keep things moving. In Public Works, the Walworth Avenue repaving project started with the closure of Walworth Avenue, west of Highway 12. Contractors pushing to have this open by Memorial, I'm assuming that's day weekend. And the section between Highway 12 and Janesville Street is expected to be closed beginning June 9th through August. In the IT department, they've closed 34 tickets for the week of the 4th through the 10th. The telephone upgrade project received 10 proposals from 9 companies, interesting. They'll be making a recommendation to the Finance Committee. In the police department, we had 3 officers, Derek, Cal, and Melissa, complete the 720-hour law enforcement academy at Waukesha County Technical College. And additionally, Derek Johnson was presented with the Leadership Award, which is the most prestigious award that a recruit can earn, and all 3 officers will begin field training on May 12th, which has already happened. Also, our Detective Bureau is currently finishing up background investigations for 3 other patrol officer applicants. They'll go through final interviews and still need to go through the Police and Fire Commission. So, good news on the hiring front, and thank you very much to Derek. Where's Dan? Derek's been with us. For those of you that are just joined the council, Derek started out as a CSO and neighborhood services officer and has been with us ever since. Fire department. The week of April 24th through the 30th, 32 calls for service with a 4.5 calls per day average. 3 calls required paid on call response. Our average paid on call response was 1 person per call. Mutual aid was requested 4 times, and no mutual aids were requested by Whitewater. And there are, of course, more details. The preceding period, there were 50 calls for service, which jumped it up to 7.14. 8 calls for service required paid on call response. Our average response was 1.125. Mutual aid was requested from us 1 time during that period, and we requested mutual aid. At the library, the expansion and renovation project is on schedule. Phase 3 of the project, which is renovating the existing building, begins mid-June. Also, Sarah French, our programming and makerspace librarian, collaborated with the Whitewater Arts Alliance to provide flower pot painting for residents of Mulberry Glen on May 5th. And the library is hosting an online fundraiser from May 12th to the 21st, so browse their auction site to find a little piece of library nostalgia. In Parks and Recs, they had a Play for Trey baseball tournament. Each tournament had 17 teams. Those are well on the upswing, and we are very happy with how our tournaments are going. The WAFC, several front staff and fitness instructors are now CPR certified, which is also good to see. And we also want to appreciate our volunteers. This past year, we had a total of 95 volunteers that donated about 2,700 hours of work, which equals, if you multiplied that by, say, $15 an hour, that equals over $40,000 of volunteer work. Media Services, our former employee Kyle was recently recognized for 2 excellence awards, 1 for his tax increment financing video and 1 for his municipal budgeting video, and he received an achievement award for his 2nd Salem Business Spotlight video. And both Kyle and Matt were honored with excellence awards for their first Bridging Whitewater series. That's all to say, I'm really happy with the work our media team is doing as well to make sure we're getting information out, and more importantly than that, it's being seen. Human Resources, we're accepting applications for a variety of roles: summer camp instructor, parks and streets crew to wastewater facilities, sports officials, concession workers for tournaments. If you know anyone who's looking to make money and make a difference, please send them to our jobs page for more. As far as retention, we had 21 employees join us at the Innovation Center for an open house, and the date was extra special as it also marked the city's 140th anniversary. There's pictures above. As always, please contact the Chief of Staff for any needs, and if you need to contact me directly, my information is there. With that, I turn it back to you, Council President.
All right, any questions for John on anything he covered? All right. I also did want to note, for those that maybe hadn't seen, that former Fire Chief Mike Higgins had passed away on May 13th.
Thank you.
Just
Thank
wanted
you.
to acknowledge him. I think, was he the last chief before we went full-time? I thought. He was integral in that handoff and making sure, and I just wanted to note his passing because he had been a staple on the fire and EMS. So just wanted to make sure that was acknowledged.
Thank you.
Next up, we have responses to questions asked at the May 6th council meeting regarding the SRO at Whitewater Unified School District. So Rachel, I know the memo's in the packet, so I'll let you cover
Great.
that. And then we've also got a discussion, a couple items on the actual agreement again. So Rachel,
Okay.
if you want to just cover the answers to those questions.
Yep, so there was really two separate issues. The first being that the contract or the current agreement is actually not for 60,000 flat, it's for 60% of the salary and benefits, along with any overtime that are associated with those events. I did list what the last 2 years have been, notated that we also did not bill the school district for the pay that after the union signed the contract and everything. So that difference did not get billed. We took that cost on. The second part of the issue is, pertains to the additional SRO that everyone's kind of hoping that we get. I know some of you were there for a lot of those discussions. We went back and forth quite a bit. Started off with the 40% that we budgeted. At one point, that was decided we needed to budget full salary because we're not even close to an agreement with that. So rather than under budgeting ourselves, we moved that to a full-time position, but also noting instead of having detective, we would have a patrol instead. And that way, if the agreement gets made, we don't undercut the staff again and end up in the same spot. So, do you guys have any questions about?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. All right, next we'll open it up for citizen comments. No formal council action will be taken during this meeting, although issues raised may become part of a future agenda. Participants are allotted a 3-minute speaking period, and although specific items listed on the agenda may not be discussed at this time, we do allow for public input when those items come up for debate. So if there's anything not on the agenda anybody wish to speak on, just come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Anybody online? All right. All right, next up, we have ordinances first reading. First up is ordinance 2025-017, an ordinance amending subsection 11.12.011, stop signs, which would add a stop sign on Walworth Avenue and Prince Street.
Yep, this was considered last council meeting as a consideration. The direction of the council was to bring this back as an ordinance to install stop signs on Walworth Avenue. Staff is still in opposition to it. However, if you want to proceed, we would ask that you do not waive the second hearing, so word could still get out for if there are others who would want to come and speak at the next council meeting. And second, Walworth Avenue will be closed to through traffic starting June 9th. My recommendation would be is that we put this into effect when we open up Walworth Avenue at the end of August. That way stop lines can be painted and additional signage can be put in and such.
Who did request this? Okay, Brian, do you want to speak to it first?
So, a constituent had brought this to my attention, the number of accidents or near misses, and what they living on that corner and what they witness in terms of traffic and in terms of safety is what led to me bringing it up.
That's fine, and I don't think there's any there's no beef over here. I think we want to just encourage the council to remember that, as Brad has eloquently put it, stop signs are not traffic control, so we shouldn't make this a repetitive use to solve speeding issues. We should look for other ways to control speeding issues, notwithstanding the concerns here. That's it.
Yeah, and I go by the manual of uniform traffic control devices. Otherwise, we'd be putting stop signs up at every intersection if that's what you want, so be it. But, I think that's not the way we want to go. So my recommendation is just based off of the MUTCD.
Yeah, sure, if I can add. I think respectfully, I'm opposed to this. I kind of agree with the staff, and I drive that during the busy times, and I don't really see any issue, and I don't think that a stop sign is gonna help. If I can ask for a clarification though, and I'm just curious, I don't have an opinion either way, but I'm just asking out of curiosity, why is it not an approved practice to put a stop sign in to slow down traffic?
Stop signs are used to allow side street traffic to enter the main street, or vice versa. It's based on volume of traffic, so side streets do not get backed up and don't have an opportunity to get on that main street. So it's to stop traffic on that main street to let the side street in. I said that backwards the first time, sorry.
I get it. Yeah, it's basically, it just doesn't, you're suggesting that it would require higher volumes.
Correct, it's based on volume. Stop signs is the first thing, and then after yield, stop signs, and then traffic signals.
Steve?
A point of information, I suppose. Have other, was there any other ideas besides the stop signs floated for this, or is there a study that was done on the?
There is no other studies done on this, no.
So I believe it was, the report on the speed data was about 10,000 cars is what I saw on Walworth specifically.
It didn't really appear as, it's not a speeding issue. I mean, there was a couple over, but
Is there any motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2025-017 to go into effect at the reopening of Walworth Ave.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second? All right, seeing no second, that motion fails for lack thereof. Is there any other motions or action on this item?
Just as a for example, we could revisit this issue in a year, right? We could, staff could come back and put the speed monitoring up at a, I'm not saying you have to take any future action, but this would be the opportunity where you could do something like that.
I'd like to move that alternative ideas be investigated besides a stop sign to see what other traffic control procedures could be done and looked at over the coming year, and so that we could revisit this next year.
Staff would just ask that go through Public Works before it gets here, and that's up to you guys,
Yeah.
but that's would be our request. Perfectly fine, run it through Public Works through to council.
So in terms of direction, is there any objection to that? Otherwise, we wouldn't need to maybe have a full motion and vote on that. So is there any objection to requesting staff to continue to work on this and alternatives and start at the Public Works Committee? Orin, you're good?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, next up is item number 17, ordinance 2025-018, an ordinance amending chapter 2.08.010, meetings to change the time of the common council meeting from 6:30 PM start time to 6 PM start time.
move approval.
Second.
All right, moved by Hicks, seconded by Shannon. Any questions from council? Any public comment on this? All right, Heather, if you'd please call the roll.
Orin Smith,
Aye.
Singer,
Aye.
Syoon,
Aye.
Shannon,
Aye.
Mike Smith,
Aye.
Hicks.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Next up, we'll move to second reading, ordinance 2025-014, an ordinance amending 5.20.030 pertaining to enforcement of gaming machines.
Yeah, so just
Dan,
a
do you
quick
wanna-
recap of this again. It would just remove the current language in the ordinance and allow state law to govern, is really what it comes down to.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, moved by Hicks, seconded by Shannon to approve second reading of ordinance 2025-014. Any further council questions, comments? Any public comment on this item? All right, roll call, Heather.
Syoon,
Aye.
Shannon,
Aye.
Mike Smith,
Aye.
Hicks,
Aye.
Singer,
Aye.
Orin Smith,
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. And next up is second reading of ordinance 2025-015, an ordinance amending 2.62.020 Whitewater Transparency Enhancement to require Class 1 and 2 hearing notices to be posted on city social media page. Is there a
Move
motion?
approval.
Second.
Moved by Shannon, seconded by Hicks to approve the second reading.
I saw the stuff for the PARC posted today. It looked good, and glad to have that information out there.
Any further council comments? Any public comment on this item? All right, Heather, if you'd please call the roll.
Hicks.
Aye.
Orensmith.
Aye.
Singer.
Aye.
Mike Smith.
Aye.
Sayun.
Aye.
Shannon.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. All right, next up, we have considerations, discussion, and possible action regarding whether or not to submit an RFP for the Whitewater Unified School District School Resource Officer.
I will keep it brief. There were a couple council members and Dan were at a meeting. Based on my conversations with Dan, who will step up to the microphone and talk with the council, both of us are still of the opinion we should not submit an RFP. We should continue to advocate for either an extension to the agreement or a revised agreement. And both of us do recognize that there is a sincere effort on behalf of the council to try and keep this relationship moving forward. Notwithstanding all of that, that's where we come down. I'm happy to give you more, but I believe it was detailed in the memo, and we seem to be more about moving forward than relitigating everything. So I'll turn it over to Dan.
Yeah, I think it's a complicated issue, so I won't rehash everything that's in the memo, but I think what I would like to highlight is one of the important things that I heard at that meeting is that I think there's support on both the city side and the school board side to keep a Whitewater officer in as the SRO. But in terms of how you get to that point, I guess that's where I think there's concern. And, you know, for me, the RFP process boils down essentially to a mandate. You're going to do it this way, sign on the dotted line. And the problem with that for me is it ignores the efforts that we're making to collectively work through it. So, and I think it's important that we do that in collaboration with whoever the new superintendent is, because that relationship is very important. Because clearly there are concerns, and just signing this RFP doesn't allow us to work through that and move forward. So that's where I'm at with it.
And I can speak a little bit to the meeting. So there was a meeting with Dan, President Pro Tem Shannon, and myself, along with School Board President Hicks and Vice President Aranda and School Board Member Keenbaum, to address some issues directly relating to some of the personnel matters that, you know, just making sure Dan had that information. But I think overall, it was a very productive meeting. As Dan, you indicated, I think that people want to get to where this long-standing partnership continues. But we understand there are concerns on the school board side. So I think we're, with the RFP, just looking at it as a council member and as part of this body is, you know, it looks like it's a contract with a RFP cover sheet, where it's like a fill-in-the-blank contract, and that's traditionally not the kind of RFPs that I know when we solicit for things. And that was my concern to Dan or to Chief Meyer, is, you know, usually when I think of RFP, there's, you know, a bit of material that has to be provided and generated, and that does take time. I mean, there's whole departments of businesses that just do RFP work. So I think my concern was, one, it's an RFP because it has that cover sheet on it, but it's really a fill-in-the-blank contract, and really no opportunity to say, well, here's our proposal. It's like, oh, just fill your names in. I mean, I guess you could redline it, but then is that going to be considered or not? So I think when we go through kind of some of the concerns we've heard overall, and the fact that the school board has not had an agendized consideration of our original offer of a 120-day extension to work through these issues, I have a motion that I just wanted to kind of lay out that I think hopefully would help us move forward in a concrete but constructive manner.
I just want to clarify. Are you proposing this as a motion to
Yes.
get to discussion?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. I
Yeah.
just wanted to clarify, you're going to propose a motion, looking for a second, and then we'll call
Yes,
for
yeah,
discussion
I
and
wanted
comments.
I wanted to set the stage, and then we can open up to the council and the public, just so we have something to start with.
Perfect.
So I would move that the City of Whitewater decline to submit a response to the school district's RFP for school resource officer, and instead reaffirm the city's April 15th offer of a 120-day extension, and also move that the city submit a revised draft agreement for the SRO services and request a joint meeting between representatives of the city council, school board, chief of police, and legal counsel being our city attorney, the school district's legal counsel, and also potentially the district attorney, Walworth County District Attorney, because I think some of those issues are related to enforcement or investigations where I think that voice would be helpful. And with and the district attorney. And then specifically, that would be used to facilitate that discussion on the investigation protocols and parental notification, and where legal and safety considerations may limit disclosure. And basically, the agenda for that meeting would be a standardized protocol for incident investigating and handling, a revised evaluation and feedback submission process that includes formal documentation and continued written input from building administrators, and expectations for the school resource officer backfill coverage during training court appearances, other absences, including potential deputization or addition of a second full-time school resource officer. So I would make that motion to get it on the table,
I second.
and we'll go from there. We'll start with
So-
Neil and then get council out of it, and then we'll go.
Heather,
to-
I can get this for you in text.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So in short, not respond to the RFP as supplied from the school district. However, we would supply our 120-day MOU extension in lieu of their actual RFP document. So we're submitting something, but not their form, correct?
Yeah, we would submit it through the same mechanism we did the original one that we adopted on April 15th, but with the additional language of, here's a framework of getting these other issues resolved, to continue that negotiation, to bring something back to this body as well as the school board for final consideration.
My only concern being if we don't frame it as it's a response to their RFP, it just gets dropped until July 1st minimum, which after that, the decision's already been made. So I like the idea of submitting something to show that we're interested in an open dialogue, and as been stated, I think there's plenty of community interest and school board interest and council interest to make this work and have a Whitewater PD SRO versus a third party. Again, I'm nervous that if we don't frame it in the response of an RFP to their request, it's gonna get railroaded till after July 1st when a decision's too late.
I totally respect that. When Dan and I talked, our concerns about trying to hit that deadline mostly, and I'll let Dan certainly feel free to override anything I say, mostly center around the RFP wasn't issued until yesterday. It's still not available on any public channel that I can discern. And really, from an administrative standpoint, legitimizing their process by responding to it is almost an acknowledgement that we're condoning the path we're headed down. And I would strongly urge the council to consider that. They can always table something. We just did not take action on something, the stop signs. I'll leave it at that. I don't need to repeat where I'd like to see it headed. Those were the concerns that we had for not, certainly we recognize it's important. That's why we got it on the agenda so the council could talk about it. But again, the concerns of just conforming to a process that have not been public or transparent.
So you'd be all right, just real quick, readdressing it, as Patrick had said, is of resending our MOU in different channel?
I think the intent would be we would have the attorney send it to their, I would let you speak for yourself, but certainly their administrator and council or the board president, and would ask that it be placed on a future agenda. I don't know if there's more we can't, we can certainly send it to each individual board member. I don't know if we need to do that.
Sure.
I wish they would have taken it up when we respectfully requested it, because we'd be ahead of this kind of looming deadline.
And I think that's why, in terms of responding with this, their RFP does close next, I think it's a week from today. But I think their consideration of it isn't until their their meeting in June. So this would potentially, if we can push this out, they can still amend their agenda, they can have a special, like, it keeps the dialogue going, where the RFP, if we send that over as an RFP, and then by the 23rd, it's like, no, they don't, I think, Dan has done a bit of work with the school district, with administration, over the last 9 months, a year, to get to a workable agreement. So, I mean, we have been negotiating with the school district, the district administrator, for a while. So it's not like this has not been discussed, at least at the staff level. Now, I'm not sure, I didn't go through every single agenda, but, I don't know that the board has considered anything formally about our agreement, but they did take action to issue the RFP.
And two, I was looking today with the DPI, and their suggested timeline on procurement for RFP-based processes is 21 days.
Yeah.
This is not 21 days.
Yeah, and I think that was, in talking with Chief and with John, it's a very irregular process. And we just want to keep, we have an agreement in place right now, we have a longstanding partnership, there's flexibility by which, they can potentially deal with the RFP in terms of how it's published. I mean, if we solicit an RFP, we don't have to go that
They could do an
direction.
RFP after the 120 days if we don't reach successful agreement. Not that I'm trying to control what they do, but I think the breathing room we continue to extend, I think, is what allows everybody to take a step back and then reassess and move forward more constructively.
All right. Any further questions? Otherwise, we can open it up for public comment.
Did you get a second to your motion, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Smith.
Sorry, thanks.
Yep. All right, anybody in the public wishing to speak on this issue? All right, anybody online? All right. Any further council discussion? All right.
I'll just,
Oh,
Chuck Mills, 336 Whitten. I realize it's been in the works for a little while, but now they're throwing this 120-day timeline at you and this and that, and I was just saying, I'm no lawyer or anything like that, but I am a businessman, and any time that I don't redo a contract before the contract is up, then the old contract rolls over. So if they don't come up with a competent addition to what's going on, or present you with something doable, it seems to me that you would just forcibly roll your contract over until such a time comes that something can be negotiated. I mean, you're just not going to have security at a certain point because they demand a different contract and whatnot. So that come to mind. And then secondly, I was reading through the article concerning this, and it seems that the school system wanted special treatment when it came to investigating things and getting the parents' permission and this and that. And I just wanted to say that if the child is caught doing something, or there's an investigation and they're down by the railroad track or over at the restaurant or over at the skate park, it's one way. And then in the school system, it would be another way. That doesn't make any sense to me. It seems to me that the same rules would apply in school as they do on any other public street or area. So I see there's a lot of pushing and shoving going on. And then, like I said, keep in mind that, as far as I know, it's all been good, other than some of the people with the school system that don't agree with this. But I'm not hearing any complaints. And There's been no misconduct whatsoever, so I don't even know why we're at this point. But nonetheless, I just want to remind you, just as a businessman, because they say you got to do it, doesn't mean you have to do it. 120 days, I don't care if it takes you a year or 2 years, whatever, just keep rolling it over until they come up with something that is doable. Thank you.
To that point, maybe that would be helpful for the public in that.
Just ask, that would be how I would like it handled. If there's a
Yeah.
question based on the
Yeah.
comment, ask
Tim,
staff,
can you-
staff will respond.
Tim or John, can you clarify the logistics of kind of the termination clauses in that current contract and the auto rollover or lack thereof? And just kind of where we're at with, what happens on June 30th if nothing is done?
Tim's got it.
All right.
The way this contract is actually written, there is a sunset time. The contract fully terminates as of June 30th, 2025. There is no longer a rollover option. It had rolled over for 5 years, was how it was operating, and this demands an absolute rewrite of a new contract. That's why the 120 days would allow that contract to extend past that date and not expire at that time.
All right. All right. Any other public comment? Since Chuck might have spurred somebody else to think of something. All right. So we'll turn it back to council. Any other council discussion on this item?
I just want to state, whether this passes or not, I hope that, I hope the incoming superintendent for the school board doesn't look at this as a hindrance between the negotiations with the city and the school board, and we need to get something done. It makes most sense to have our own internal police department in the schools, and I just hope that we can come to the table and make this work for both parties.
All right. I can just give a Cliff Notes version of the motion, just so we all know what we're voting on. So the motion was to decline submission of a formal RFP from the, or proposal to their RFP request, and to reoffer the April 15th approved 120-day contract extension that we made, with the goal that they would agendize that for consideration. But we would also outline some other steps moving forward in terms of kind of that same working group, along with legal counsel from both city, school district, and district attorney, to work through some of those kind of last items that need to be addressed, which would be the standardizing protocol for incident investigation and reporting, the revised evaluation and feedback submission process for the school district to provide concerns to the police department on the SRO, and expectations of the police department to backfill any SRO absences, whether that be deputizing another officer or looking at a second full-time SRO. Everybody on the same page? All right. Heather, if you'd please call the roll.
Mike Smith,
Aye.
Singer,
Aye.
Sioun,
Aye.
Orin Smith,
Aye.
Shannon,
Aye.
Hicks.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Next up, we'll move on to discussion possible action regarding renewal of Twin Oaks Mobile Home Park license.
Allison is here online.
Yeah.
For newer council members or those looking for a refresher, typically there are some outstanding violations. There always are. We're always working on a rotating list. But once a year, the council reviews that and reviews their application and decides whether or not to either renew it, or typically it's held in abeyance until we get compliance with any large outstanding issues. So I've reviewed the materials, and they look to be doing a significantly better job this year than last year. But with that, I'll turn it over to Allison.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. The city manager is correct. This year, Twin Oaks has been doing a significantly better job of keeping track of the violations that are existing within the mobile home park. The total number of open items at this time is 30, but that is much reduced. Overall, since January 1st of 2025, we've had over 77 items be successfully closed out and come into compliance in Twin Oaks. We have had to issue quite a few reinspection fees, but now Twin Oaks has been very approachable and very agreeable to working with the city. I think at this point we've worked out a really good communication system. They've been a lot more receptive and a lot more communicative working with us, so that's been going really well. At this point, I would recommend approval of their license renewal, given the fact that, you know, they have been working with us very well. I'll also just note that they do have some existing lots that historically have been empty. They are currently using those lots for RVs. If anybody is familiar with the Twin Oaks Mobile Home Park, you'll know that when you enter the park, there are several more temporary type of campers, RVs, fifth wheels, and they're removing those, and they will be adding permanent mobile homes to those 12 sites. So they're working on that now. It's not a new addition. It's existing spots. They're just going to fill it with permanent residents. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
I think I've got kind of two. Number one, this is for a 1-year renewal, and number two, is there any specific reason behind the increased communication? I'm glad to hear it. I'm just curious if there was something that prompted that to turn around.
I had actually, reached out to someone in corporate, and we had a really good conversation about, what they needed from the city in order to try and be successful, and what we needed from them to be successful in this, and make sure that we're, helping their residents as much as we possibly can. And so after that meeting, I think we had an increased understanding of what each party needed from one another. And so we were able to improve our overall communication. And yes, it's for 1-year renewal.
Any other questions?
I'd move approval.
Second.
It's been moved by Shannon, seconded by Hicks to approve the renewal for Twin Oaks Mobile Home Park license. Any public comment on this? Or anybody on behalf of the mobile home park that wanted to speak, just come up to the podium.
Made the trip, why not? Need my name? I'm Jim
Yep.
Elder.
Yep.
So I work for Open Management, the property management company there. Used to work for the city. Allison's been great working with. It really came down to some logistics, I think, on both ends on how we can get this list compiled and over to us. Just like the snail mail system shows up to us way late, like weeks later than it was sent. So they were already getting reinspection fees by the time we had initial notices. It was just kind of a mess, logistical mess. So we're now getting those emailed to us. So day of it goes on our list, and we're able to just start putting it in our system to be addressed. The other thing for a lot of these lingering 30, I'd say the vast majority is a lot of those violations are tenant-owned homes. We cannot legally enter their home or do any work on their home. They own that physical property. It's like a vehicle. So our hands are tied when it comes to our ability to remedy these situations, because we simply cannot do the work. And so that's another issue with getting all of these taken care of. I guess I'll leave it at that unless you guys have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Elder? Just thank you for coming today, and also thank you for the work you've been doing with Allison to make those improvements.
No problem. Appreciate it.
All right, so there is a motion to approve. Any further discussion? Heather, roll call, please.
Syon,
Aye.
Hicks,
Aye.
Shannon,
Aye.
Orin Smith,
Aye.
Singer,
Aye.
Mike Smith.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. All right, and next up we have the main event for the evening, which is discussion and possible action regarding the future of the Starin Park water tower. So as Ms. Blackmer's starting to come up, we had tasked the Landmarks Commission with kind of investigating, and they formed a Stern Park Water Tower Committee to investigate, how to approach the preservation and action plan for the water tower. So we have a very well laid out report, but I know Ms. Blackmer is here to give us a little presentation, and then we'll turn it back to council and public comment for any action on their proposed plan. So Pat, if you want to take it away.
Thank you. Pat Blackmer, 445 West Center Street. I'm here this evening as chairman of the Landmarks Commission to present our recommendations on the fate of the Stern Park Water Tower. As you reviewed your packets, you noticed that a community committee had been established to assist the Landmarks Commission. So it was not a unilateral decision by the Landmarks Commission. The Landmarks Commission actually consists of city staff, a current city council member, as well as individuals in Whitewater who are interested in historic preservation. The entire Stern Park Water Tower Community Committee consisted of members of the Landmarks Commission, as well as business leaders, members of the Tourism Council, a former city councilman and well-respected community leader, young-minded citizen advocates, and members of the Whitewater Historical Society, one of which is employed as a preservation specialist at the Wisconsin State Historical Society and was an invaluable asset to us. I might point out that I wish to thank all of the committee members who are here tonight in entirety. Our committee is here in entirety. The primary recommendation then, obviously you can see, is up there, and you have the additional recommendations in your packets. Slide 2, please. The water tower was completed in 1889 and obviously is a focal point within the city. At any entry point to the city of Whitewater, it is visible as one of our most historic and iconic structures. While still in commission, it was one of the oldest operational water towers in the state of Wisconsin, and certainly a source of pride to our community. Next, please. This year, the water tower is 136 years old and has been an official local landmark for the last 10 years, which offers it protection by our city ordinance. It's an important piece of Whitewater's history. Legends and lore surrounding the so-called Witches Tower has earned the moniker for the city of Whitewater as Second Salem. This is known not only within the state of Wisconsin and locally, but nationally. Obviously, the water tower enhances the park and certainly is an asset to tourism, as evidenced by the annual Spirit Tour that we have, and it is always a sellout. A structural analysis was completed by the McEnroe Engineering Company in 2022, and the results indicated that the tower is safe in its current condition. The only concern at this time is the potential for stone falling, and the fence around the perimeter of the water tower is effective at keeping the public away and allowing for their safety. Next, please. McEnroe provided two estimates to us. It estimated that demolishing the tower would cost $600,000. And it estimated that a total cosmetic restoration of the tower would cost $1 million. Next, please. Therefore, we would recommend that the city allocate the $600,000 that was appropriated for demolition to fund for strategic and essential repairs to stabilize the tower for the long term. Brad, there should be another slide. The stone for the tower was obtained from the southwest side of the city of Whitewater, where our limestone quarry is located. At the base of the stone structure of this tower, the walls are 8 feet thick. It tapers up to 4 feet thick under the tank. Next, please. We would recommend that you briefly delay the submission of our finalized report and allow the city of Whitewater to engage McEnroe to update their analysis of 2022, specifically to perform an examination of the metal tank, of which you have a series of photos, and to provide an analysis of what repairs could be performed for a budget of $600,000 that would result in long-term stability and prevent structural failures. Next. The metal tank is placed on a series of I-beams, as you can see, spanning over the water tower and bearing on the 4-foot thick walls, which are masonry. Next. There are 2 large girders that support these small beams. Next. There is also a floor system below the girders that is comprised of steel beams and wood planks. You have an additional 3 or 4 slides within your packet that I will not go into, but please be aware that they are there. Next. While a full restoration of the tower is a worthy goal, at this time we view more immediate needs as stabilization of the masonry and joint repair, and repair to any corroding tank elements. That is why we recommend re-engaging McEnroe to update their report and specifically perform an internal examination of the tank. The city has already invested, and I don't know if you're aware of this, nearly $100,000 in the tower, with $80,000 allocated to the masonry repair that was done by Cornerstone Company of Sullivan, Wisconsin. And we also appropriated $18,000 to the McEnroe Engineering Company in 2022 when they did their structural analysis. Thus, the Landmarks Commission would like to explore how the city may perform this stabilization within the $600,000 budget. However, for this to happen, the council would need to approve our recommendations. Next. While our water tower is not quite as old or well known as some of the great architectural wonders in our world, such as the Colosseum, nor does it draw as many visitors or tourist revenue to our city, it is significant to the history of Whitewater and should be preserved for future generations. Next. Please consider a vote to accept our recommendations and allow us to move forward with the preservation of this iconic structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat, for all your hard work on putting this together. We'll open it up for council questions and then public comment and then any action so we'll start with Mr. Hicks.
We just did, on DPW, we just did an update to an analysis that was, I think, 3,000 or somewhere similar in there for the garage. What would your ballpark opinion be for a cost on renewing this analysis? And could we absorb that either DPW or elsewhere?
I'll answer the second question. It would be absorbed through the water department utility because this is a water department asset. I think what they're looking for an update on is more of the structural analysis of the steel beams and the condition that they're in. I would think it would be in the $5,000 to $10,000 range off the top of my head, but don't quote me on that, obviously.
Okay. My other question would be, if we proceed that route, the $600,000 that was laid out for demolition versus, or preservation, is that set in stone already? In water tower stone, or can we, if we go back and get a new analysis and they say, well, now it's $800,000 in today's dollars?
I would say that based on conversations with the Public Service Commission, that the 600,000 is the number that we're stuck with.
Okay. Okay.
I just had a quick question, since we're on that topic. So that 600, is that money that is just coming out of the utility, or is that money we're getting from the state? Like,
No, it would be money that, money that the water utility taxpayer, or ratepayers would have to come up with. So more than likely have to borrow the $600,000 for any improvements if it's a one, you know, if it's a lump sum thing that we're gonna be doing. If it's, you know, 50,000 this year, 50,000 next year, that might be something where we don't have to borrow for and then incorporate in rates, but that could, you know, lead to other projects being delayed or something. But it is ratepayer,
yeah, and that's what
water
I just
utility
wanted
ratepayer
to
money.
clarify. There's not 600,000 sitting in a bank somewhere, just waiting to be allocated to
Right.
this. This would be borne by increases, or funded out of the utilities budget, which would be directly paid by.
Tied to rates, yes.
By the
This-
rates.
yeah,
Right.
when and if that happens.
Yep.
My only other, not necessarily, it's a question, but it's not an open-ended question. Say we proceed with the 600,000 for immediate repairs now. Go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if we proceed with that, the 600,000, we make immediate repairs in the next, just say 2 years, and that nets us 25 years of life out of the water tower. Aren't we just kicking the can down the road that in 25 years, we're gonna be back at this spot and it's gonna be $3 million to either demolish it or repair it again? We're kind of, I don't want, I'm not, I'm definitely, I like it, I don't wanna say get rid of it, I don't think we should demolish it, I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate. If we spend the money now, we don't have the money down the road to demolish it, if we need to.
We're not interested in spending the $600,000 at this point. As the McEnroe report stated in 2022, the condition of the water tower is safe. It's not going to go anyplace. I mean, considering the thickness of the walls at the base and tapering up to 4 feet at the top of the water tower, our concern is the tank on the top of the water tower. And we feel that, you know, McEnroe should be re-engaged, at least to give us an assessment of that. Whether we do any restoration to the water tower at this point, that's not the legitimate concern as far as masonry and tuck pointing. That could be extended for another 10 years before we did anything. It's just we want to know that that tank is safe. And, for example, if a high wind came through, a high-velocity wind, we don't want it to fall off or anything like that. I would just ask, you know, that you allow us to re-engage McEnroe. Certainly, we have no budget as the Landmarks Commission, and Brad was willing to work with us with that regard and gave us some pointers, so that's where we're at.
Sure, if I can ask a question. I'm with Neil. I think it's really beautiful, and I do want to, you know, I'd love to see it preserved. Has there been any effort for private funding to restore?
Within your packet, there was a recommendation that we would like to, at some point in the future, if all of this goes through, establish a public-private 501c3 in order to raise money. At this point in time, there may also be grants available, but because of the freeze by the federal government on any grant funding at this time for historic preservation, we would not be able to get that at this point right now in time. But yes, we would like to see a private-public foundation established at some point.
So am I correct in saying at this time, basically, the ask that's critical would be to get the updated analysis.
Correct.
We need to get the quote on that first, but yes, and then assuming it's under $10,000, if Brad's correct, that can probably be handled internally, and it probably won't cross the council's desk again until the results. But if we need more than that threshold, we will be back to the council asking them to authorize that expenditure, and then we can discuss whether or not that's coming from the 600,000 or elsewhere, because I do understand the strategy of trying to preserve that money.
So if we do approve, say, going back for an updated analysis, can we direct them to concentrate on the tank versus, they don't need to redo the walls, we know they're 8 feet thick, we know they're pretty good. Can we have them just concentrate on the girders and the tank itself?
Yeah, and, yeah, I'd ask a couple questions, what they could do for a cost. The last time they did LiDAR inside and outside, to gauge, the thickness, we could have them do that again and do a comparison to see if there's how much deterioration has happened over the last couple of years. That might be, good to know. I don't know what that cost is, but I can reach out and ask for a list of things that we're looking for and costs associated with it as, line items, and we can pick and choose from there.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just want to thank the committee for all of their work and the report here and kind of the breakdown of it. Gave us stuff to kind of think about and make considerations of the deeper questions of what does a tank look like?
And I think it would be helpful also, I think you kind of enumerated it in your write-up as potentially using the engineer to kind of project out what the cost of keeping it in not working order, but stable order would be, and how do we absorb that? Because I forgot the exact number, but just looking back at the non-binding referendum, where we did ask our voters, if they would support tax dollars, but all our ratepayers are pretty much our taxpayers as well, and 56% had said no. So I just want to be cognizant of that feedback that we've already gotten from the electorate, but also understand, what would it take to do that? What, option 3 or whatever you called it in the packet, just so we understand the implications of what financial support would be required over a number of years.
So practically speaking, there's a deadline coming up, right? For a
Pardon?
report, there's a May deadline for a report. Practically speaking, if the council wanted to take action, I think it would be to delay that. And in the meantime, we need to pursue whatever language you would like to insert for the additional, either getting a quote or moving forward with those additional studies, pending on how they come in. I know it's very loose, but that's generally, the deadline is they're supposed to submit a report that they are not prepared generally to submit without this additional information.
Exactly.
Is what I'm getting. And so that's what they're asking for, is move the deadline, have staff do the investigation to try and get those reports done.
Any other questions for Pat? Otherwise, we'd either have a motion to at least start the discussion here or open it up for public comment. Any objection to public comment? All right. Yeah, if you want, Pat, you're welcome to come up if there's questions, but we'll open it up for public comment now. So if there's anyone else wanting to speak on this item, they can come up to the podium and state their name and address for the record, and with a 3-minute speaking period. Who's this?
Lynn Binney, 1315 West Sattonwood Lane. Pat Blackmer approached me a few months ago with what turned out to be an awkward conversation. She wanted to know if I would be willing to serve on a committee to talk about the future of the water tower. And I said, well, Pat, I'm not sure if you really want me on there because I likely have different opinions than most of the people who will be on the committee. I tend to be pretty conservative fiscally, and I envision the possibility of the city getting stuck with a long-term problem, trying to maintain this tower. And I also was very aware of the outcome of the non-binding referendum. I'm not sure if I admitted it to Pat at that time, but she probably surmised I was among those who voted against that binding referendum. So I agreed reluctantly to join the committee. Went to the first meeting without enthusiasm, and pretty early on started talking about how I envisioned this kind of expense, and after all, we wouldn't want the thing to look really bad ultimately. And that's when Dave Salsa said, you know, in Italy there's this Colosseum, and in Greece there's the Parthenon, and those are hardly in pristine condition, but people come to those by the thousands. Well, he struck a nerve with me because I had seen both of those places in the last few years, and yes, I appreciated them even though they were nowhere near their original condition. Dave's comments served as a light bulb for me that we could maintain the stability of this water tower potentially without worrying so much about maintaining it in its original condition. And I envision the possibility that we could go for decades without really putting significant money into it, as long as we don't have an expectation of keeping it as close to original as possible. To me, the important thing is safety, and that's why we focused on that metal tower. We already feel that the limestone falling off is not a safety concern, but goodness knows if that tank fell down, it probably would not be held back by that fence. So I encourage you to consider supporting this committee's recommendations.
Thank you, Lynn. Anybody else wishing to speak?
I do have somebody on
Okay, all right, we'll do Carol and then we'll hit the person online.
Hi, I'm Carol Cartwright, President of the Whitewater Historical Society, and also a member of the committee. And I think the important issue to keep in mind here, and what we really came up with, was the idea that the $1 million restoration, to really bring it back for full use, you know, maybe having people be able to go in there and have it perfect in a certain way, was perhaps unrealistic. And in the field of historic preservation, there's an in-between area between tearing down a building or a structure, and making it, you know, the Pabst Mansion in Milwaukee. And that's the idea of stabilization. Maintaining it so that it can be, it can stay relatively safe. We take, you know, in consideration keeping the fence, keeping the public away. It would not perhaps be fully utilized by the public with the stabilization as it could be perhaps with the restoration, but also that we would keep in mind to do repairs that would be indicative of not putting as much of a financial burden on the city for the future as possible. That's the idea of getting McEnroe there to, in a way, prioritize. Obviously, the tank needs to be looked at, but what are priorities for stabilization for the long term? What would those priorities be? And that's, I think, what our goal is. We don't mean to, as you said, kick the can down the road. We want it stabilized for the long term. And I think there's a way to do that with the help of the engineers and any other consultants that they bring in. And it wouldn't, so I think what we'd like to see the city do is support this idea of stabilizing, maintaining it as a historic site, for the city of Whitewater, for the future of Whitewater. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Carol. All right. Online, we've got Chris Strauss. So Chris, if you want to mute yourself, and you have 3 minutes, and then we'll have Larry Catchell in the hopper.
Can you hear me? Am I doing this right?
Can you speak a little
Okay.
louder, Chris?
Sure, no problem. Christopher Strauss, 155 North Higher Lane, apartment 110. The one thing I want to note is I've been doing my own research into the history of Whitewater. And one thing I've seen, especially online with YouTube, is there's a lot of lore and traffic that brings people in to sort of investigate their own tourism of the place. So if anything, it's definitely a tourism attraction that can greatly improve traffic in our area. And if we decide to demolish it, at least have some sort of monument to it would be an alternative, I guess. So that was my two big things, because you can just do a YouTube search and see all the paranormal investigators who love coming to our town, and that brings their fans here to look at it too. And I grew up with that water tower, considering the whole lore behind it as a kid. So we definitely want to see it as a tourist attraction, if anything. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Larry Cantrell, 457 South Buckingham Boulevard. I would like to thank the committee for the work that they've done. They need to give them their chance to see if they can raise money to stabilize it. I believe that $600,000 quote, I'm no expert on water towers, especially 136-year-old water towers, but I did talk to enough people that do masonry work, that do concrete work. I think you can stabilize it for a lot less than $600,000. And especially since you've said you're not asking it to go back to pristine condition like it was before. I think just a sealant on the outside would help to preserve the weather effects, the erosion effects on the outside of it. But give them their shot, and I would be willing to help you with your fundraising. That tower's not going anywhere. Been here 136 years. Is that the original tank? Yes. So, sand in it, something in it, steel beams, whatever it might be from the inside, and you're not expecting anybody to go back inside of it. Let's give them their shot. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else wishing to speak?
Hi, Jill Gerber, 234 South Pleasant Street. So I like the tower, so don't throw anything at me yet. I just want to make sure before you purchase an extra report, as I'm listening to what they're saying when they come forward, I was at the original Park and Public Works meeting, sorry. When the guy came in and spoke with us, Blackmer was there as well, and some other people, council members and stuff were there. My takeaway seems to be a little bit different than what is being said tonight, so I just want to make sure that that report is looked at again. When he came here, and I know nothing about structural, whatever, redesign, engineering, all that other stuff, so from my understanding, the fence around the water tower was placed too close. So there was an issue with the rocks falling, if they would fall, and it was going to be from the top 2 layers of the tank. So the tank, and then it kind of widens as it goes down. The top 2 layers were the problem with it structurally. I had asked about removing those 2 layers and shortening the tower. Okay, that's not so easy. And they laughed, which I get it now. I also asked about removing the tank. I was told it takes a bunch of big cranes and that wouldn't be an option. But what they did say, there was no way, they did say it was structurally safe for now. They did not give the amount of years forward. They did say the problem would be with the falling rocks from the first 2 layers, and the fencing was a problem. So there was no mention of any beams. I'm not sure where all that came from, tank, or why we're looking at the tank when I thought it was the first 2 levels of the rock. So I just wanted to explain that. So you, at least if you're going to go back to the engineer, you make sure that they're looking at the right areas.
Thanks, Joe. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right. Anybody else online? Great. All right, so we'll turn it back to council. We've kind of heard the recommendation of at least extending the report deadline, but are there other parameters in terms of a potential engagement with McEnroe or other information that would help the council, the committee, public understand what it would take to do that stabilization option? And then open it up for discussion, or if there's any motion that anybody wished to make at this point. Steve?
Point of information. Could we just, tonight, just approve all the recommendations from the Water Tower Council Committee? Is that something we could do, or is it, are we looking at a more limited?
Assuming it's voted, yes, you can. You would motion, right, to accept all the recommendations. So there's like a 2-barreled question there. The legality and technicality, yes, you can. I would encourage you to work with the council to see if the rest of them want to adopt all of them wholesale. You just kind of want to, eat the elephant one bite at a time.
Do we need a motion in order to, my assumption is we need a motion to extend the deadline for the report and provide the money to update the report from McEnroe. That is my motion.
What? Yeah, because one of the recommendations, just if we did adopt them wholesale, is the committee recommends that the city of Whitewater delay the submission of a finalized report. So they're asking for it to be delayed. The question is, what was that delay? Pat, were you 3 months, 6 months? What was the thought in terms of how much more time would be needed to get that information, especially if we engage the engineering firm?
It would entirely depend on engaging the engineering firm and what their timelines are.
You can like
Why don't we make
delay
it
to
the end of the year?
delay, right?
Yeah.
Make it contingent on the receiving the materials and so forth.
All right, I'll move to delay the necessity of the report from the Landmarks Committee to the end of 2025, and to allocate the funds to get the report from McEnroe.
Second.
All right. So in terms of funds, I just want to clarify, because maybe having that in the motion may help, because, John, you have some authority.
I can go up to 10,000, so we can do that. Like, I guess the question would be, is there an upper limit to the discretion? And right, otherwise
I don't imagine that's going to cost $10,000. So
How much?
I don't imagine that's going to cost $10,000. So
Then I think you can just direct staff to execute it and bring it back to the council if the estimate is more.
Okay. Is that okay?
Yes.
Part of the motion? All right. So moved by Smith M., seconded by Sayun.
Okay.
Orin, did you have anything? I know you've been part of the Landmarks Commission and part of this work, so I just wanted to make sure you had your input heard.
Sure. I've had a really lovely time working with everyone on the Landmarks Commission. They are a very driven group of people who really care about our community, and that's been really awesome to work with. They're already working on a lot of ideas for how to kind of capitalize on the tourist idea for the water tower, and I hope that we can continue to do that. There's been floated ideas of 5Ks, of Tower Fest, some of you might have heard of. Lots of things that we'd be really excited to do, and I'm very much in favor of continuing this process.
All right, so there was a motion to extend the deadline to 12/31/2025. If it does come back earlier and the committee has an ability to review the engineering results and wants to recommend again back to council, we can always agenda that at their leisure, but setting kind of that not to exceed the end of the year. And also to provide direction to staff that, within John's budgetary discretion, to be able to authorize the engineering work, and if it does exceed that, to just bring that back to us.
Just one more question, maybe for you, Pat. On recommendation number 5, for the committee encourages formation of a private nonprofit organization for purposes of fundraising and creating a plan to preserve the tower long-term. What's needed from the city to make that happen? Is that all external parties, or?
That would be an external recommendation that would be handled by the Landmarks Commission. However, there would be some involvement from the city at some point, simply because if the $600,000 that was appropriated through the water utilities was used, in fact, for stabilization, I'm not sure how that would be managed by a public-private 501c3. We would need some direction regarding that.
Sure, if I can. You wanna go ahead?
No, I was just going to say, it's going to be more like a Friends group, similar to like
Exactly.
Friends of the
Mhm.
Effigy
Mhm.
Mounds, Friends of the Library. Is that kind of the vision that I think?
Correct.
Yeah. No, I'll throw out there, I think the comment was made too, that it's probably gonna cost significantly less than, hopefully, than the 600,000. I would love to see the report from McEnroe come back and say, oh, it's gonna cost 200,000, and the Friends of the Water Tower have come up with 100,000. That would be awesome.
Well, that would be
have a
awesome.
spaghetti dinner. I'll eat spaghetti. So,
But first, you have to approve our recommendation, just so that we can move forward and hire, or Brad could hire McEnroe, or engage McEnroe, I should say,
I'd
or
like to
another
propose an
company.
amendment to also include recommendation number 5 and number 6 to your motion. So my other question on number 6, if this becomes a national register of historic places, would the city be on the hook for maintaining, or can that also fall back to the Friends of?
Absolutely not. When you're on the National Registry, basically, it is a prestigious recognition and does not involve, it would not involve any, it would not involve the city at all.
Okay.
Yeah, so your amendment, and we'll look for a second here, is to basically adopt recommendation 5, which was establishment of a private organization such as a Friends of the Water Tower, get them rolling as soon as.
Does recommendation 5 need any type of support from the city?
I don't think so, but we could just endorse it as,
Okay.
And check that off the list. And then number 6 was having, I assume the Landmarks Commission would take the steps to register the water tower with the National Register of Historic Places.
We would be able to do that when the federal government reestablishes grant funding.
Okay.
We would have to apply for a grant to do that.
But this isn't contingent on any of the restoration work. That can go. Okay.
Those are all additional recommendations that we made.
So Hicks moved to amend to add 5 and 6 into our motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Second by Sayun. Any further discussion on the amendment? All right. Roll call, Heather, on the amendment.
Hicks.
Aye.
Singer.
Aye.
Mike Smith.
Aye.
Shannon.
Aye.
Orin Smith.
Aye.
Sayun.
Aye.
All right, that motion is amended. So now we're on the main motion again, which is to delay submission of a final report by the Landmarks Commission, or the water tower report, to the end of 2025, and also provide staff direction to pursue engineering work to update the stabilization needs of the structure, as well as to adopt number 5 and number 6 recommendation in the presented report. Everybody on the same page? All right, any further discussion? All right, Heather, if you please call the roll.
Sayun.
Aye.
Orin Smith.
Aye.
Shannon.
Aye.
Mike Smith.
Aye.
Singer.
Aye.
Hicks.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes and moving forward, so.
Thank you for your support.
Yep, thanks, Pat. All right, so next up, another discussion on stop signs. So discussion and possible action regarding adding stop signs at Peck Street and Whitten Street.
This was on the agenda last time, and I think tied at 3-3, so it was asked to be brought back this council meeting in hopes of there would be 7 members. However, there's no 7 members, so it's up to you to decide what you want to do, I guess.
Who was the original?
This was another constituent concern that I've heard from numerous individuals. I think one of the things that most specifically changed since the previous discussion a couple of years ago was the outflow of traffic from Lincoln Elementary School. They, I believe, added a no left turn sign or something like that out of the school, and so the way that it routed the traffic, basically we end up with a tricky situation when it comes to school children, pedestrians crossing through that area.
All right, so we are short a member again.
So
we just,
and again, this is just a consideration, how, if you want to move forward with it, it would be another ordinance brought back at the next meeting to be voted on, so.
all right, is there a motion to request staff to bring back an ordinance establishing the stop sign as proposed in the consideration?
It's not a big deal. I mean, meaning we can do that, and we can have the conversation similar to what we had previously with 7 members. So no one would view the putting together of the ordinance as some sort of implicit approval that we're moving forward. It just gets the relevant document to the next meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Hicks, seconded by Shannon to direct city staff to bring an ordinance to the next council meeting with the changes to the Prince and Whitten, or Peck and Whitten Street intersection. Any more council discussion on that? Any public comment on that? All right, roll call, Heather.
Mike Smith,
No.
Singer,
Aye.
Shannon,
Aye.
Orin Smith,
Aye.
Sayun,
Aye.
Hicks.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. All right, then, next up, we have councilor requests for future agenda items or committee items. Orin, did you have anything?
No, thank you.
All right, Brian?
Nope.
Mike?
No.
Steve? Neil?
Just item, do you want to bring item number 16 back to DPW for further discussion?
Yes, for the follow-up motion, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's it.
All right, and then next meeting, I think we have our lakes discussion, so hopefully all 7 of us are here. All right, next up, we have adjourned to closed session to reconvene pursuant to Wisconsin statutes, chapter 19.85, parent 1, parent D, except as provided under statute 304.06, parent 1, parent EG, and by rule promulgated under statute 3.04.06, parent 1, parent EM, considering specific applications of probation, extended supervision, or parole, or considering strategy for crime prevention or detection or prevention. So this would be a discussion on police department updates on strategies of crime detection and prevention. Is there a motion? I move that. Is there a second? All right, moved by Singer, seconded by Shannon to go into closed session on that one item, and for that, we will be inviting in Chief Meyer.
That's it?
Dave, oh,
That's it?
you're out?
Nope, it's just an
All
update.
right, all right,
Just
so
an
we
update.
just have city manager and police chief invited in. Orin, I'll let Brad work on making sure people, who have to leave the meeting can do that, but we keep you on. So is there any further discussion? All right, Heather, if you'd please call the roll.
Sure.
Sorry.
Patrick Singer.
Aye.
Neil Hicks.
Aye.
Steve Sayun.
Aye.
Mike Smith.
Aye.
Brian Shannon.
Aye.
Orin Smith.
Aye.
All right, can we take like a 5-minute or so break?
Yes.
Shannon saved. And it was a split vote, so, oh, yeah.
Split vote.
All right. All right. So we're back in open session. The only item we had on our agenda was discussion possible action regarding police department updates on strategies for crime prevention or detection. We do not have any action to consider on that item, so the next item I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Hicks, seconded by Shannon to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
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 All right, thanks a lot, everybody.
Good night, Orin, thanks for being here.
We would be almost at